So, Coach, let's talk about your family.
Are they here?
They are not here. So say all good things, right? But why don't we start with your wife? How did you meet?
Oh, yeah. So actually, my wife, she was working at a deli. And I was on my lunch break one day. And a coworker had asked me to go to the deli with her. So, and I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go. I wanted to go to Burger King, actually. I'm just being completely honest. And so I said, okay, I'll ride down there with you so you can go to the deli. I'll sit in the car. But when she pulled up, she saw that there was a line. So she says, oh my God, I'm going to have to stand in the line. Can you please just stand with me so I don't feel weird standing in the line? So I'm like, what's the big deal? You're going to get food. Just go get your food. I'll stay in the car and listen to the radio or whatever. So she was like, just come with me, LaMonte. So I remember I went in there and I'm standing in line and I see this woman walk from the back of the restaurant, and I looked at her and I said, man, and beautiful eyes, beautiful smile, and then when she walked away, beautiful, but it was just a moment. Now at the time, I can't say that the angels came down and said, "LaMonte, that's your wife." I can't say that they said that. But I saw her and I had said to myself, I'm like, she is probably the most beautiful woman that I've ever seen before. So she is cleaning off tables, and of course she spotted me. Who wouldn't? And she spotted me, and we kind of locked eyes. And she's cleaning off tables, and she drops a fork. So I walked over and I didn't say anything. I just picked up the fork and I gave it to her. And she said, thank you. And I just smiled. And, my coworker, she got her food and then we left. And I remember it. Her and I, up to this day, my wife and I, we still debate about this whole little thing because since I'm, sitting here, my story is a story that counts. And my story is the accurate one. When I was walking out and she was looking out the window, cleaning one of the tables, she was staring me down like I felt something burning on my back. And I turned around and she's just staring me down. And that was the first encounter. So probably about a half hour later, I go back to my job and I'm sitting at my desk and I'm thinking to myself, I just need to know who she was. So I took a bold step. I made a bold move. I called the deli, and not knowing that she was the person that answered the phone, I asked. I said, "I'm sorry, I was there having lunch and I left something." Now, in the back of my mind, I'm doing the brother thing, thinking I didn't say this, but in my mind, I'm thinking, well, what did you leave? I left I forgot your phone number. That's what I forgot. But I said I left a portfolio, and she said, where? And I said, is there a waitress there who had like a bone necklace? Well, she had a shell necklace. We still talk about, but I don't know why I called it a bone necklace. She said, do you mean a shell necklace? And I said, yeah. And I said, is she there? She said, this is her. I said, do you know who this is? She said, yes. She had never heard my voice. Right. She had never heard my voice, but she knew it was me. And that was 23 years ago, and up to this day, she's still talking to me.
Well, I'm struck by that story that you didn't talk. You always talk.
And that's the thing. I probably didn't want to say, come on, I've always been a smooth brother, but I probably didn't want to say something that was going to be stupid. And plus I was in my flow. The flow is, and so I was trying to be cool about it, but that is how we met. And we've been talking every day since. And, we've, at the time, and this is not a secret at the time, she had a 7-month-old daughter. And when I had the conversation with her, because I gave her, oh, by the way, when we were on the phone, I gave her my number. I said, call me after work, and we were talking. But she had a 7-month-old daughter. And when I met her, I instantly fell in love with this little girl. I instantly fell in love with this little girl. And Kiera, my oldest daughter. And, the moment after we were married, when she was 4, I adopted her. And to me, the entire thing about adopting her was just a ceremony, because from the moment I saw her, she was my daughter. So we'll just go through the logistics, but she was mine. And I was doing a show here in Charlotte, for television. It was a morning show, and I had gone out with one of our field producers to do a story, with my daughter. I believe the topic was, going to school with your child day, or walking home with your child day, one of those. And when we were telling our story, she actually talked about it. And I was shocked. I'm like, wow, because we had never talked about it before. But she talked about that, and she talked about how me finding her meant everything to her. And that's just the love that I have for my kids. I have 5 kids. So I know you're probably going there next, because the deli ended up going somewhere.
23 years
Yeah, 23 years later. And we have 5 kids. Kiera's my oldest, and then my son Cameron, and I have daughters Noah, Kate, and Keziah, and they're 20, 18, almost 20, 18, and 17. And it is the greatest feeling in the world to walk into a house and see everybody you love, and everyone that loves you. And I have different relationships with each of my children. Some like me and some don't. But in all seriousness, my family means everything to me because we've been through everything. When we lived in Connecticut, because that's where we're from, and now we're here in Charlotte. When we moved from Connecticut to Charlotte in 2012, we were here for about 6 months, and then we lost everything. When I had came here, I was building my coaching practice, and I had investment dollars, and then one night got an email that all that was being pulled. And then I find myself in a situation, what do I do next? So I remember hitting the streets here in Charlotte and applying for jobs and putting my resume in everywhere. And I remember that I sat down with this gentleman, and up to this day, I cannot remember the company or the gentleman's name. But I sat across from him, and it was for a sales position. And I sat across from him, and he said to me, LaMonte, you're qualified. You would be a great addition to this team, but I'm not going to hire you. And I was shocked. I mean, I was looking for cameras. I'm thinking to myself, is this like a reality show or something? Am I being punked, or what's going on?
Why the butt?
And I said to him, I said, why? He says, because I just feel there's something you're about to learn. And that man told nothing but the truth from that moment. So I remember walking out of his office, getting in the car, driving all up, saying, what you mean I got something I got to learn? I got something to learn? You got something to learn. I'm going to go work for your competitor, and take all your business. But I remember, that period of time, we were so stressed. We had no clue what was going to happen to us.
Well, I was going to say, did the kids know? I mean, your wife knows.
Yeah, my wife knew. But my kids, they did not know, because we tried everything we can. And I know that you're married and you have children. So there are some conversations you just alienate them from. You just don't want stress on them. And that was what we were doing. But our kids, they were a little older now in high school, so they could sense that there was something going on. So I remember that we were served with eviction papers, and I remember that we went to court, and I remember talking to the owner of the property that we were leasing from and trying to work something out, and he's just so cold. And I remember the day that the sheriff showed up to make sure that we were moving out. So we went from a beautiful home to a one-bed motel, and we were there for 7 people. Now that was a night. That was a night, because here it is. But this is the situation. We had enough money that we had saved that we were going to move into a new place. And at the last moment, the owner of that property had leased the house to someone else. So I remember sitting there in that parking lot after I got that email, trying to figure out, what am I going to do with these people? Like, where am I going to go? So we ended up, we were at a motel, and it was one of those suites, had a small kitchen, 1 bed. And when we opened up the door, and all 7 of us were standing there and looking in this room, we all fell out laughing. We fell out laughing, and we were like, how is this going to work?
Right.
But I remember that first night, Pam, when my wife bedded everybody down on the floor, and I remember laying there, and I cried like a baby. Because as a man, I felt like I had let them down as a husband, as a father. And I did not know that I was really stepping into the lesson I had to learn. So we went from that 1 bed little suite, moving up the street to what we felt was just, we had stepped up to a penthouse. We went from 1 bed to a 2-bed suite that was a little larger. But something happened at that time. I remember when we moved into that 2-bed suite, and my wife was just so appreciative. We're like, now we got room to move around, because before, you walk by somebody and it's just like, yo, nice to meet you, But then we were in this 2-bedroom suite, and something happened. I had an opportunity to go on television on Saturday mornings for a television station here in Charlotte. And that's when it started. It started when we were homeless. And I remember my son and I, we went to the studio, and I went on air, and I talked about, the very first thing I talked about was what I call the Genesis moment. Is when you have an aha moment. And because we've all had them, an aha moment is, there's information that you did not know that you knew, but then you realize that you always knew it. And that's what an aha moment is. And a Genesis moment is when you take that information and you build a new strategy around it. You build a new lifestyle. You make a decision that caters to the revelation that you just got. And that was the first thing that I talked about here on Charlotte Television. And my son was with me, and I just remember that when we left that studio and we stood in that parking lot, and we both just hugged each other and cried. And because it was what my family needed at the time. And I remember that when it was raining that day. It was in March 2013. And I remember driving back to the hotel there. And when I walked in the door, my wife and my girls were clapping, and they were so excited because they were watching that. And to them, they were able to separate 2 realities, because they saw to themselves that this is where we are right now, but that's where we're going. And they were able to see something at that time. And it was probably one of the best feelings that I had ever had. And we went from one place to the next place, and to the next place to the next place. And we met so many incredible people. People who did not judge. People who knew our story and said, you know what, things happen. We want to help you because, LaMonte, you're learning something right now. And that's what I would always hear. And I would be like, can somebody please just tell me to stop learning? Like, how much more do I need to learn?
You're never going to stop.
And you never stop learning. But what I learned was what I needed to learn, because it gave me an opportunity, believe it or not, as a husband and a father, to grow up. I was forced to figure it out. You know, sometimes we wake up and we just get in the car and we go to this place and we work. Then we go home and then we do this. And we have all these routines. But when we step outside of the routine, or that routine is ripped away from us, then we have to figure it out. And this was the first time. I mean, yes, we had struggles. We had struggles, you know, because a dream, I tell people all the time, you know, before you dream, make sure you're willing to pay the price for the dream that you're willing to have. And I remember when we lived in Connecticut, and there was one time where our electricity was cut off, and I had no clue how it was going to, you know, go back on. So we played a game with our kids. You know, hey everybody, we go do everything in the dark, and we had candles, and we made it fun, and then, you know, we would, you know, I wouldn't say that we didn't have an electrical cord that we stuck out the window and plugged it into the neighbor's, you know, outlet, you know, so we could cook and have our refrigerator and stuff like that, and they could watch their television to keep them entertained. But we always figured it out. And when our kids saw our struggle, they saw our struggle, but they also saw our dream. They saw our challenges, but they also saw where we were going. And I believe that for so many parents, if your children see you going through something, you have to show them a light at the end of it. You have to let them know that this is something that we're walking through, but this is where we're going. And you pass that hope on to your kids. And that's what we were able to do with them. So, yeah, but we were able to get on our feet. And then, you know, television began to grow for me. And my children began to see that. And the story that they fell in love with was they knew that little boy that was encountering so much hurt at a young age, who would still take off and run down that hallway and go sit in that anchor seat and begin to look in the camera. They saw that little boy who had endured so much become a man who's in front of cameras speaking to everyone. And I believe that that was the greatest lesson that I could have told and shared with my children.
And I think it brings it back to your father, because you had said you had wished that he imparted wisdom on you, and he never did that. And that's what you're doing now with your kids. That wisdom, that learning that lesson.
You know what? And to that point, I go back to what I said about him not imparting wisdom, because I believe in his own way, he was telling me, don't be the man I was. Be the man that I desire for you to be, which is different from me. And once again, this is not me throwing my father under the bus, you know. No. He was a good man. He wasn't the man that I needed him to be, but he was a great man. He really was. But the lessons I learned were the lessons that he told me without telling me. And that's what I believe that I want to do for my family.
And everyone who's watching.
And everyone who's watching.